At their core, fighting games are about making hard decisions under intense pressure. To achieve victory, you need to weigh your options against those of your opponent and determine which will put you in the best, most advantageous scenario. Even narrowing down those options to just the good ones will often lead you to yet more decisions. Should you spend your meter on a strong special move for a mix-up or save it for a super in your next combo? Do you want your combo to do more damage or do you want more corner carry? Do you say fuck it and go Babonoid Gorilla Monkey mode because playing neutral makes your brain chemicals sad? The layers of decision making go on and vary wildly between characters, games, matchups, and even individual rounds. And learning to make these decisions correctly and reliably is one of the most satisfying experiences in all of gaming. It's like playing chess, only instead of knocking over a little horsey, you get to spike a twink skull first into the pavement. It's a real shame, then, that most people never get to experience that process because of all the accessibility barriers inherent to the genre, namely execution. Motion inputs, combo strings, and even basic movement are all pretty common and well-known hurdles for newcomers approaching the genre. And because proficiency in these skills, and conversely the absence thereof, are so visually obvious, they tend to be the focal point of any beginner's efforts to learn and improve. It makes sense. If you're struggling to control your character the way you want, then it's probably important to address that issue. And I mean, who doesn't love doing big damage and flashy combos? The problem is that oftentimes this will lead to people locking themselves in training mode and combo trials for hours at a time, trying to grind their way to a level of mastery that they assume is the bare minimum for engaging with the game. By the time they finish, they're burnt out, frustrated, and have no idea how to actually land their bread and butter combo against someone operating with even half a brain cell. Then, on the other hand, you have people who get immediately put off by the very idea of needing to learn these things and quit before they even try. The execution barrier is intimidating. It seems all-encompassing. How can you play, much less enjoy fighting games if you can't get a grip on the controls? Enter Y.O.M.I Hustle. What the fuck? Hold on. Enter Your Only Move is Hustle, a turn-based fighting game controlled entirely with your mouse. This might be the single most approachable fighting game ever made. It's also one of the sickest video games I've ever played, full stop. If you've been seeing some crazy over-the-top stick figure fight scenes on Twitter or YouTube recently, they're likely coming from this game. I mean, look at all this, it's fucking awesome. It's like playing a mid-2000s era Flash animation off of Newgrounds. And like I said, it's incredibly accessible. I was able to convince a handful of non-fighting game friends to play it with me, and after a few minutes of showing them the basics, they managed to actually give me a run for my money. And one of them even straight up dusted me, nearly getting a perfect in his second ever game. And that isn't because the game is easy or luck-based or any other bullshit balancing factor that's meant to lessen the skill gap between players. It's because the game works in such a way that allows newcomers to learn quickly and start applying strategy to their gameplay. See, what you've been seeing up to this point, amazing as it is, isn't actually what moment-to-moment gameplay looks like. This is the menu players are presented with during actual gameplay. These buttons represent every action your character is capable of performing at this moment, as well as every action available to your opponent. They're broken up into groups: normals, specials, movement, and defensive options. Every turn, you'll both decide on an action, lock them in, and the game will play out the next few frames of animation until someone either gets hit or is otherwise actionable again. It actually plays a lot like Tory Bash for those familiar. Oh my god, this game is 16 years old? This gameplay loop removes any execution barrier from the equation completely, and puts the focus solely on each player's ability to make smart decisions and mind game their opponent. Every turn in every match, you're being prompted to consider your opponent's options, guess what they're most likely to do, and try your best to preemptively counter their actions. To aid in this process, the game offers a prediction system, which allows you to see the outcome of actions you have selected both for yourself and your opponent before locking in and committing to anything. Meaning playing neutral is essentially a battle of seeing who can think the most steps ahead of their opponent before ultimately wrapping all the way back around and choosing the single worst imaginable option in the name of Clauise Kalpentekatli, nailed it, the Mesoamerican god of hard reads. It's great, and not only does it allow you to see what your best options are ahead of time, it also all but eliminates any ambiguity behind what the vast majority of buttons are actually supposed to do, allowing new players to get a solid grasp on what their and their opponent's character does far more quickly than pretty much any other fighting game in existence. What's Impale? Oh, it's a teleporting hit grab that looks pretty much impossible to combo out of but does a ton of damage. How about Summon? Oh, it creates a little clone guy that throws out a bunch of knives. Oh, and look, you can even change the angle he throws them at. Alright, what does Orb do? Huh. On top of letting you preview different moves, the prediction system also highlights characters' different colors to indicate turn order. Green means that you get to act the next time a pause occurs, and orange means you'll have to wait at least one turn where your opponent gets to act without you before you get control back. It even shows frame advantage for those who like using numbers to determine how absolutely fucked they are when they go all in on a hard read and whiff. This also plays into the process of comboing once you land a hit. Since you can see exactly how long your enemy will be in hit stun for, you don't need to worry about immediately dropping a string due to a lack of character knowledge. And since the vast majority of attacks are freely hit cancelable into each other anyway, you'll rarely find yourself in a situation where you just don't have at least one decent follow-up option. That level of freedom and accessibility means that in terms of combo variety, the sky's the limit. It's very Devil May Cry in that way. Main difference being that getting hit in DMC decreases your rank, whereas here it decreases your will to live. Yeah, so this is the one thing I can see being a pretty big detractor for a lot of people in this game. Since both players are typically looking through and considering several options every turn, matches can run kinda long, about 15 minutes per round on average. There's a turn timer to limit how long you've got to think about things, and since you're mentally engaged most of the time, it doesn't really feel that long, but the overall pace of these matches tends to make getting comboed feel uniquely terrible. Depending on the circumstances, combos can range in length from 2 to 20 hits or more, and when each of those hits takes like 5 seconds to connect, it can start to feel like your opponent is doing more damage to your psyche than your health bar. You're not completely without options during this time though. While you're in hit stun, you have 2 defensive options that you should dedicate all of your brain power to, as proper use of them can mean the difference between getting to play the game again and getting put in a combo video. These 2 options are Burst and DI. Burst is something anyone with a passing knowledge of fighting games will immediately recognize. You have a burst meter under your health bar that fills up over time. When it's full, you can spend it all to break out of a combo and knock your opponent back with an invincible shockwave. This isn't a get out of jail free card, however. If at any point during a combo your opponent thinks you're going to burst out, they can opt to block instead of attacking again. This will parry your burst and allow your opponent to reset their combo, potentially doing even more damage than if you had just let them hit you. Likewise, if they try to parry your burst and you just don't do it, they'll drop the combo, and you get out for free. It's a powerful tool, but obviously you won't have access to it at all times. That meter needs time to recharge. That's where this little circle comes into play. DI, short for Directional Influence, does exactly what it says it does. It allows you to influence the direction of any knockback that's applied to your character. That means that even while you're stuck in hit stun, you should be considering your opponent's next move and using DI to make it harder for them to follow up. Or alternatively, you could just set your DI straight down at the start of the match and never touch it again, I guess, if that sounds like too much thinking to you. But unless you're going up against me specifically, I can't guarantee that that strategy will get you very far. More often, you'll want to DI away from your opponent to increase the knockback of their attack and reduce their viable follow-up options. Or up into the air if you notice that they're out of jumps or think you can reach a blind spot where they can't hit you. Proper DI strategy is both highly situational and character specific. It's an important tool to keep you engaged in mind games even when you can't swing on your opponent. I say all this not to be the tutorial that this game so desperately needs, but to give a fair warning to any potential newcomers. Just because this game is accessible doesn't mean it's gonna go easy on you. You're gonna get hit, and it's gonna suck, but keep a cool head and make good use of the tools you got on hand. Seriously, good DI can make a world of difference, and varying up your burst timing will immediately make you better than like half the randoms you'll run into. Getting back on track, all the systems in play that make this game unique and approachable also serve to make the characters easy to pick up and learn. Picking a character to learn a game with can be a pretty tricky process, especially when you're new to the genre. Obviously, you should pick whichever character appeals the most to you personally, but if your favorite character feels unwieldy to control or requires inputs that you're just not ready to execute yet, it can add some unwanted friction to the learning process. I've played 300 matches with my main across 100 hours in BlazBlue, and I still can't use his enhancer mechanic, so, sometimes things just don't work out. That's not really an issue here. As I said, the prediction system lets you preview your moves, so you can get the gist of your character's kit pretty fast and begin to put together a general game plan with that knowledge. Less obvious things like good positioning and mechanical nuances will take time and experimentation to learn, but that's already a whole layer of strategy that you wouldn't get to engage with in a traditional fighter so long as you're being filtered by the controls. It also helps that each character's name and design really effectively communicate their respective playstyles. Ninja, for example, is your high-speed rushdown character with a unique bag of tricks to help him get in. His normal attacks are the stubbiest of the entire cast, but his movement options are fast and flexible, so he can use his agility to slip through his opponent's defenses and get in their face with ease. When he's out of his effective range, he can use shadow clones, shurikens, and caltrops to set up for situations that limit the opponent's options while he closes the distance. He's even got some special moves with projectile and strike invincibility, so he can weave through an opponent's attempt to stuff his approach if they're too predictable. Wizard sits on the opposite end of the spectrum. A zoner who excels at flooding the screen with projectiles, then using huge explosive spells to cut off any attempt to get through the bullet hell. A well-played wizard can feel untouchable, always sitting just out of reach and flinging all sorts of magic at his opponent. His ability to transfer his momentum into a hover can make him especially hard to pin down, as he's able to create space and immediately fill it with hitboxes for you to deal with. Make no mistake though, wizards don't belong on the opposite end of the screen. Not for long anyway. The fact that they're a zoner doesn't take away from the potential of their combo game, and any good wizard knows that it's important to stay close enough to properly capitalize on your opponent's mistakes. Finally, landing somewhere between the other two, there's Cowboy. And while the name may give the impression of a gunslinger, he's better described as Stickman Virgil, with a gun. He's easily the most straightforward of the cast. His sword lends his moves a good blend of speed and reach, allowing him to play a strong mid-range game. And while his walk speed is quite slow, he makes up for it with an omnidirectional teleport and a judgment cut a la Virgil, allowing him to threaten opponents from just about any angle or range. And then there's the gun, which acts as a stance change. When you draw the gun, you can either fire a number of bullets, fire a bullet that goes off after a short delay, or just throw the fucking thing at your opponent's head. I don't think I should need to justify that to anyone, because even if it wasn't the powerful combo tool that it is, it would still be worth including because of the sheer goofy joy that's elicited by using a projectile weapon as a makeshift projectile. And if you aren't the kind of person who would get some sort of baseline satisfaction from that, then I still don't need to worry because you're clearly not someone who enjoys video games. Or fun, for that matter. All these characters lend themselves to different and unique strategies in spite of the fact that control scheme-wise, they all play pretty much the same. You're clicking on buttons in a menu, not inputting 360s for command grabs, or timing out perfect charge inputs, or making your fingers bleed desperately trying to buffer a micro dash so you can finally do some decent damage with your combos now to Y! It's all very pick up and play friendly, and if you aren't gelling with one character, learning another is as simple as previewing a few buttons and seeing what works. And if even after all that you still aren't clicking with anyone on the base roster, or you just want to switch things up, there's always mods. Yeah, the game isn't even out of beta yet and it already has an impressively active modding scene. A lot of these characters are a good bit more complex in one way or another than the base roster, so it doesn't really fit too cleanly into the whole ease of access thesis we got going on here, and the balance can be all over the place, but I thought it was too cool to not at least shout it out. If you're looking for a recommendation, I'd say give Delinquent a look. He's my favorite. He uses an electric yo-yo as his weapon, and if you need more reason than that to play a character, then why? There are other mechanics and specifics to go into detail on. I'm sure the more observant watchers have probably noticed a few parts of the HUD I haven't gone over. But like I said, this isn't a tutorial. I just wanted to talk about a cool game I like. Fighting games aren't for everyone. They never will be. They're hard. They're complex. They have a control scheme that's almost completely unique from every other genre of game out there. But they also offer a largely unique experience. Here on YouTube, there are plenty of fantastic videos and even entire channels dedicated to helping people get into fighting games. But there will always be people just too intimidated by the learning curve to take the plunge into the genre. This is why Your Only Move is Hustle kicks ass. With its unique control scheme and mechanics, this game allows anyone to jump in and engage with it in the same way that an experienced player would in any fighting game, with intentionality and strategy. And maybe that jumpstart will be enough to help some people see what's so special about these games. That's what I hope, at least. I've been playing fighting games for about 5 years now, but before that, I thought it would be impossible for me to get good or have fun with them. All it takes is finding that one special game that you click with, that sticks around in your head for a while after you finish playing. You'll come back for another few rounds and find you've improved. Little by little, you'll find out what works, and more importantly, what's fun. Then you take this knowledge and experience into the next game you try, and congratulations! You've taken the trip through the fighting game player pipeline. I'd like to take this opportunity to inform you that there is no going back, and your desire for violence will only grow. Where the fuck was I going with this? Oh, right, that one game. The game is set to release on Steam a few days after this video goes up, and at a $5 price point, it's not exactly like you'll need to worry about waiting for a sale. Plus, the current free version of the game will still be available as a demo. Honestly, it could only be cheaper if the dev personally pulled up to your house and paid you to play it. Now go, get out of here. Go play the funny Stickman game. With a friend, preferably. If you don't have one, you can check out the official Discord, or just match with randoms, I guess. A new Steam release will pretty much guarantee a large influx of new players who will be starting on roughly the same foot as you. Whatever you choose to do, have fun with it. And if you only take away one thing from this video, let it be this. I didn't invite you here, and you need to leave.